A while back, I had a staff relieve me, really a sharp guy, and I asked him for comments on what we could do to improve the office. And like a lot of offices, we went through a period of telework, during the COVID. And he was critical of it. He felt he was a great worker, as good as he could be, but with you at home, sometimes the kids are around, sometimes the dog's around, it's hard to really be honest and say you're getting as much done as you would be without it. In your opinion, is widespread federal telework as effective, efficient, and good for the taxpayers' in-person work?
Congressman, thank you. And as you noted, it was an important tool during the pandemic to navigate through that for some of the federal workforce. It's important to put in context the federal workforce. About half of federal workers have to be at a work site to perform their job responsibilities.
Right.
Our approach in early 2023 was to release guidance to agencies to substantially increase the amount of in-person work. The purpose of that approach was to strengthen teams and organizations, make sure that we had strong culture, make sure that we had innovative teams, make sure that we were able to bring people on board. For office workers, the place where there's consistency across different agencies, we've been clear that our expectation is agencies are achieving at least 50% while giving them flexibility for how to deliver based upon their diverse mission space. That's consistent with where the private sector is, and we're going to continue to adjust as needed. We should compete for talent. We should be able to measure performance.
Okay. So you're saying a good target is half the people going to work every day?
Our expectation is for office workers,
right,
headquarters and equivalents, that agencies are achieving at least 50%. To the extent they want to adjust to levels above that, we give them that flexibility. We set that target because it's consistent with where the private sector is. We think, given where the market is, that's the right answer.
I'll ask you again. Do you feel federal telework is effective, efficient, and good for the taxpayer as in-person work, in your own opinion?
I think that agencies have the ability to deliver on effective and efficient telework.
You don't want to answer the question. The White House Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, sent an email to cabinet leadership in August 2023 calling for agency heads to aggressively increase in-person work, stating that doing so is a priority for President Biden. His email said that doing so would allow the executive branch to deliver better results for the American people by improving teamwork and productivity. Does Mr. Zients' email imply that teamwork and productivity within the federal workforce had been negatively impacted by widespread telework?
Thank you. The rationale for our approach to substantially increase in-person work was because we believed an amount of in-person work is critical for healthy teams. We've seen that in the private sector. We want that in our organizations going forward. We're trying to also make sure that leadership is focused on it, so it's not a check-the-box exercise. We want to make sure at least half of hours for comparable work is in person based upon what we see in the market and what we've seen on the evolving research. We think that's the right answer. That balances the flexibility, that gives strength to our teams, that increases employee engagement, allows us to compete for talent.
So that's a permanent state of affairs now for the federal government. Half, your average guy, or I'll say even management, where I think it's even more relevant. Is your policy for management of teams that they're there half the time and half the time they don't have to be?
Our policy is for agencies to achieve at least and make sure that
well, again, I'll narrow it down to management positions. I mean, in my opinion, it's more important for management to be there than someone else. Okay, so then management is kind of overlooking things. Are you satisfied if management only comes in half the time?
Our focus is making sure that agencies have policies that are geared towards performance. If being in person more for the management team improves their performance, that's exactly what they should do. Okay.
I mentioned that the last email from Mr. Zients was January 19, 2024, pretty late in the game. Do you feel that your progress towards getting people back to work in person is slower than desired? I mean, it seems to me like the COVID is ancient history right now. And I think that email dated January 2024 kind of recent. Does it imply that things are going slower than your expectations were?
We expect agencies to completely follow through on their implementation, and we will hold them accountable for that.
Okay. I'll just make one more comment. I do feel that in government, sometimes they don't realize the degree to which in the private sector, in many areas, everybody was back to work, okay? And when I'd go home at night, it's kind of a stereotype, but I got Wisconsin. I got all these cheese factories I drive by, depending upon which way I go home. They were all packed even at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know? So I just want to emphasize that I think in many private sector jobs, they were showing up at work in the teeth of the epidemic, and the time for we should be back to where we want to be. Thank you.
Chair, now